I guess just to start, it would be nice to get a little bit of background, on you and kind of your experiences. I know that you haven't always been in Web3, but you have a lot of experience in web. So maybe kind of running through a little bit of your background and, kind of where you come from and how you
Sure.
ended up in the space.
Yeah. Okay. So I born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was an athlete always growing up, an entrepreneur since like the age of 15, starting with like, mowing grass to shoveling snow in the winter to teaching baseball lessons to just like trying to figure out how can I make money. Something early on my dad always taught me was just like ways of making money and the value of a dollar and the value of hustling. And so early on, I was doing that throughout my whole entire life. Went to college to play baseball and study economics and finance. And then right after school, I launched, and this is in 2012, I launched a podcast media network. I thought I was gonna become a professional athlete, and I know like in your questionnaire leading up to this was like, I think it was like, what's one thing that didn't come to life or
Yeah.
that you thought would like turn out? My whole life, like I thought I was gonna be a professional baseball player. I excelled at a high school level, excelled throughout my life, got a scholarship to play in college. And all of that was a blessing. And in college, I actually tore my shoulder, my labrum, and had to get reconstructive surgery. I opted out of that, blah, blah, blah. You know, that
Yeah.
dream didn't come to life. And right after school, I launched a company called Inside the Athletic Grind, where I interviewed and built content. And mainly it was a podcasting network around interviewing professional athletes. And instead of talking about like where they are right now, it was more, how did you get there? Like, and
Yeah.
really, I was trying to answer the question in my brain of why didn't I become a professional athlete? Did that for a few years, learned how to raise some money at the same time, figured out how to bring on people to a team, work with coworkers, the early stages of my real first step into entrepreneurship. And after 2 years, that business, I decided to pivot out of that. What I really loved doing was creating content. And we were at a time where a lot of small businesses and companies were starting to build their own websites, social media, starting to really lean into branding. So launched a branding website agency called Indosha. And here in Pittsburgh, I partnered with Carnegie Mellon and Pittsburgh Startups, University of Pittsburgh Startups, and helped people at the ground floor uh, build companies and build ideas, and really fell in love with that. And did that for 5 years. During the later stages of that company, I moved out to Silicon Valley to surround myself with more entrepreneurs. And this was in 2016. And ran into at my now wife, girlfriend at the time, her Christmas party. I ran into one of her coworkers' boyfriends, and he said, "I'm building this thing called SongLink. It allows people to share a song no matter what streaming platform that they use. So you just share this link. If you use Apple Music, I use Spotify, then you could just share the song link, and that's how you can share music with your friends." And I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." A few weeks later, I went to him and I'm like, "Hey, man, I did a bunch of like market research. I found that on Instagram, there was a bunch of artists that were just sharing like SoundCloud links, Spotify links, Apple links. If we just target artists instead of just people at work that want to share music, I actually think there's like an opportunity for this." And at the time, Linkfire was, I think, charging artists a few $100 a month for some custom URLs with some like Google Analytics, and really believe that you know what, I think we can build a product around this. And that was my dive into the music industry. And this is in 2016. So my partner at the time was building at PayPal, and he was an engineer at PayPal. I was still at my agency, and uh, what became a nightly weekend project soon became full time. In the first year, we went from a few thousand users to a few 100,000 users, and 4 years later, we were acquired by Linktree. Um, and so, all that to say, I really loved working with artists immediately. It felt like I was working with entrepreneurs at Indosha. And during this time frame at Songlink, I realized there's a lot of artists that make less than $10,000, or they're making a small percentage is finding a way to really sustain their career and make a lot of money. And there was not really a middle class. And after the acquisition with Songlink and Linktree, I joined a fitness tech company thinking like, oh, I just want to be in tech. I really loved what I did at Songlink. A few months in, realized, man, I really love music. Is like I really love just being in music. That's truly what I really attached myself to, and joined the Mint Songs team. I don't know if you heard of them. In 2021 and in October, right before the boom of what we saw last year, and was a part of that bull run, and really helping artists find a way to generate income and revenue from their music, just like what I was doing at Songlink. And that was my entrance into Web3.
Yeah. That's such a like a, interesting story with like all these different, little twists and turns that I think a lot of people can relate to. I mean, myself, like I swam in college. Like was a swimmer basically my whole life. And there's this, I know you touched on it in another interview that you did, but this relationship between like musicians and, you know, sports stars, like the whole, the Drake line, like we want to be them and they want to be us kind of thing. And there's
Yeah.
this kind of, I don't know, this endless loop of interconnectivity between sports and music that kind of like whenever someone's in one field, they kind of like get the other one because of this mentality of hard work and that separation between the people that are really successful. Like you said, it's very similar in sports. Like there's no middle class in sports. There's, you know, D1 going pro, and then there's like everyone else, and there's that hard work mentality that feels like it's going to pay off, but there's also that extra something that you got to have.
Yeah, that I think there's a strong connection. I actually see the same with entrepreneurship, athletes, artists, where you have to learn a bunch of skills, but at the same time have a focus on your vision and
Yeah.
work on all of these things and try and master them, because collectively they come together and they help you achieve this one goal, that whatever that goal is in your brain. Like for you, it could be your time. For swimming, for me, it was pitching and trying to throw harder and be a better pitcher and more accuracy. And yeah, I find that with artists, like spending time, especially in Web3, right? They have to be marketers. They have to be the leaders of their business. They have to be entrepreneurs. They have to figure out who to collaborate with. They have to be team players. They also have to work on their skill, and they have to be better songwriters and find a way to produce their music and surround themselves with people and collaborate. So it's very much I see the similarities, and I always go back to sports and like Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000 hours that you put into something, and that's how you perfect things. And very much see the similarities with sports and music. I didn't know that you were a swimmer in college. I don't want to flip it the interview back on you, but do you see the same with like coming from that swimming background and having a music background, and kind of seeing these two skill sets of like, I needed to master these things in swimming, and I also need to master these things in music, and like there's some connectivity there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like for me, it was always just this grind mentality, but also this aspect of having fun. I think both sports and music, they share not only the working hard, but it's something that people like to do. Like it's fun. You know, that's
Yeah.
why people dream of being musicians and dream of being professional sports players. It's not just because those people are famous and they have clout and get the girls or whatever. Obviously, that stuff is nice, but it's also they're doing something that they like to do, and it's fun and it's a community. You know, a lot of these things you get to collaborate with people or you get to play with someone who's at a really high level. And I think those things are very attractive. Um, and some of those things are even translated into entrepreneurship. I think that the grind is, like you said, the same, and but there's also this aspect of doing something that you like. You described going to a company and realizing that that's not really kind of where you fit in, and that maybe you need to be somewhere where you can, be more of an influence, or that you can lead things, in a way rather than following. I think that's kind of this entrepreneurial spirit, and so yeah, for myself, I definitely feel that way when it comes to music, Web3, uh, and that's what I thought about sports too. It's just wanting to be a leader, wanting to make things for other people, and share things with other people. I think um, that's definitely a big part of it for me. Uh, yeah, I was thinking about kind of all these different aspects that an individual has to manage, right? And part of what gets me through the day to day is having goals and managing, myself, and setting time constraints, and balancing all these different aspects, because you want to be a leader, but you want to create things, you want to collaborate. Like you said, you need to be promoting your own, businesses or your own art. There's a lot of different aspects. So as someone who's, you know, been in the game for a while now and been successful, how do you manage like all these different aspects of your life? Whether it's being a dad or, trying to, still be involved with sports, getting more involved with music, being more of a leader and an entrepreneur. How do you balance all that?
Yeah, I mean, well, with sports, the only thing I'm doing these days, I am preparing for a marathon in 2 months, which I'm pretty excited about. But I'm only playing in terms of weekly outside of running, it's playing in a 40 and over basketball league with my dad. Um,
Hey,
but I
that's
would
still
say,
being active.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely active. Basketball is also another love of mine. I would say time blocking. After I worked at Minsongs for a year and then found a lot of success after SongLink, which brought me into Web3 and being around artists and being around other developing companies. And they're like, hey, Nick, you want to help advise? Do you want to help invest? There's an artist named Heno who's like, hey, do you want to help me with some of my Web3 projects? And then having a full time job, a family. It's time blocking, like going back to a calendar, looking at, one thing I really love what we do over here at Arpeggi is having sprint goals. So working in 2 week increments, saying these are the things I want to accomplish over the next 2 weeks, meeting every single day and talking about the small tasks that you're doing that will in 2 weeks amount to you finishing those goals. And I think I take the same approach in life. Even I got to walk my dog at this time. I have to drop off my son at school at this time. I have to pick him up at this time. If I actually want to be an advisor or support for some of these communities, like I have to just put it in my calendar and it's a non negotiable. Like I have to follow through with my calendar and make sure that I execute and show up. When I was little, my grandma used to always say to me, it was like, hey, 95% of life, Nick, is you showing up. So with a calendar, dedicating yourself to those time slots and just showing up, that puts you ahead. And personally, what I think is a lot of people in the pack, and really doing what you said you were going to do that day. Those are bricks that eventually will lay, and they will amount to a house and a foundation that you built, and you will soon be able to accomplish goals. You will soon have bigger goals. You will soon have bigger goals. And it took a while to get here. I would say right after school, right after baseball, kind of lost trying to launch companies. Some of that, I would say, with like Inside the Athletic Grind, my first venture, I didn't have that time block schedule. I didn't have that sprint schedule. I had a lot of dreams. I had a lot of things that I hacked on throughout the week, but I didn't understand how to connect the two. And for me, it's truly about time blocking, because it's, if what I do at Arpeggi is like I help the growth and the partnerships and lead that. So getting artists to use the products that we create, if I'm not working on those relationships and talking to people like yourself daily throughout the week and landing those relationships, then I'm not doing my job, and I'm not like hitting the things that I need to hit for me to be successful at my job. And the only way I can do that, truly through my eyes, is time blocking.
Yeah, I like that. I know that myself, I also went through a little bit of the same kind of realization that it's good to have the big dreams and the big goals, but sometimes the short term is just like much more important, because without accomplishing things, whether it's, you know, okay, this week you're finishing a song, and that for a long time it was really difficult for me because I never feel like I'm finished. I always feel like I got something to add, and
Mm.
at the end of the day, you're not going to finish anything if that's your attitude. You're always going to be one step from being done. And I think having 2 week goals, 1 week goals, or having your time blocked for a single day, saying this is the time that I'm going to give myself to relax and have fun, and this is the time that I'm going to be working on task A, task B, task C. Um, I think those kind of routine based um, organizational skills are hugely impactful in being able to achieve those long term goals as well.
Yeah, one thing killed me too was being a perfectionist early on. I remember early on trying to build a website for myself, and it took me like 6 months. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even actually the work, right? It was just, I thought in my brain it had to look a certain way. When I was like, really, when I finished, I was like, it has nothing to do with the website. It's something about getting it done, reiterating, finding a way to make it better throughout the weeks. But if you're a perfectionist, it's almost, it kills you, because you'll just be running in circles and circles. So being okay too with, I did this, I did it to the best of my ability, even though if it's not perfect in my brain, it's still done. Like, it's still off the task list. And to me, that's much more important than having something perfect or a 10-star experience.
Yeah, definitely. And especially nowadays when the demand for kind of large amounts of content is so great, you can't really afford, unless you've already reached some kind of status of, call it celebrity status, where you can, let's say you're a musician, you can create, one song, and people are, waiting for it for years. And when you finally drop it, let's say you're Rihanna, right? Everyone's waiting for her album, right? So if she makes it, even if it's 3 songs, everyone's going to go crazy. It's going to, go platinum. There's no problem. And realistically, how many artists can do that? There's like 10,
Not
20.
everybody's Kendrick, right? They can drop
Exactly.
every 5 years, and people are
Exactly.
excited about that. But
Yeah.
don't you think, as an artist too, there's like a balance, right? Not to just push out so much content where you kind of lose vision of what you're creating, but also pushing out content that is quality, that aligns with your brand. So I think there is a balance there,
Yeah.
and I think it's different for every artist, right?
It's definitely different for every artist. I think that, a lot of artists, you know, they cave to the machine, right? The demand isn't coming from it's not internal, right? It's an external demand for this volume of content. So if an artist, at least in my opinion, if you see an artist that's putting out a crazy amount of songs or a crazy amount of stuff, it's usually because they're caving to the society that they're in, not necessarily because that's what they want to be doing or that's really their identity. At least that's how I think. I could be wrong, and I'm sure that there are some artists that, they just like putting stuff out, and, like I know, producers like Zaytoven making 15 beats a day, and for certain careers, in order to be successful, you just have to do that because, your chances of success are so slim that the more you put out, the more likely you're going to be successful. But I think you're absolutely right, especially for performing artists. There's this balance that you have to make yourself, and you have to decide where is the healthy relationship between being authentic and being, consistent in your brand and in your, vision, and also giving the people what they want. It's this weird relationship. I was talking to a good musician friend of mine, Aiden, about this this relationship that musicians have with themselves when it comes to, you grow as a person and you grow as a musician over time, but there's also this expectation by your fans that you're going to make the same kind of songs that you made that made you successful, right?
Mm.
You see a lot of musicians that get criticism for, well, he's not making the stuff that he used to make, or old Kanye's the best guy, or whatever it is. There's this constant rhetoric surrounding music and art and any kind of creative field, and finding the balance between growing as a person and being authentic to yourself and, giving the fans what they want is difficult, because at the end of the day, you're trying to reach people. That's why you're making it to begin with. So you want to connect with people. You want them to see where you're coming from. You want them to respect your sound. So yeah, it's this, everything in creative fields feels like a constant push and pull between the artist and everyone else. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, it's like trying to find your lane. Like in Web3 specifically, there's Jonathan Mann, who's a song a day. And I think for the last like 10 or 12 years, he's released a song and he drops every single day on Twitter, right? Not all of those songs probably are, like this 10-star experience that some songs are just getting over the line, but I buy into him because of the story that he tells and because of this is what I'm doing, right? And
Yeah,
that
he's doing
that
it for
that
him.
incentivizes, right? Right.
Exactly.
And then there's others that sit in a shell for 10 years and come out with 3 songs and you're like, oh, this is the best music I ever heard. And it's, again, yeah, every artist I feel like just needs to find the lane that makes most sense for them, to their story, to their sound, and what they're trying to create.
Yeah, I think there's, in addition, there's this evolution that people go through when it comes to getting better at a skill and getting better at a craft. Similar to, in entrepreneurship, you know, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. Um,
Right.
and, sometimes that comes with failure. Sometimes it comes with success. I think it's interesting to see in business, a lot of times people want to work with someone who's worked in a, $1 billion failure, right? That person will be valued highly because they're seen as having experience. And, a lot of that is true. A lot of it's, maybe not so true. But at the end of the day, it's basically a respect thing that the person has had. They're not just sitting there and saying, oh, yeah, I'm working, but I have nothing to show for it. At the end of the day, whether it's a success or it's a failure, at least you have something to show for it. And it shows that you were working hard. And it's kind of your resume of grinding, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When I was building Songlink, like we didn't take any money and we bootstrapped the company. So that meant, I'm living in the Bay Area. I'm living in Palo Alto. It costs a lot of money just to like survive
Rent
there,
is
right?
high.
Rent is high. So I had to work overnight shifts. I worked overnight shifts at Lululemon, and I helped them curate their stores just to pay for freaking rent and food. So during the day, I could keep building this thing that wasn't making money, but we had like hundreds of thousands of users, and you had this like excuse me, but this mind fuck of this thing's really successful, but not really successful on paper where I can like provide for my family. So I can do this other thing to like supplement this thing. And you have like your parents coming at you, you have people in relationships that are like offering you opportunities, and you're just like sticking to the vision because you believe, and you believe. And that's what entrepreneurship, and that's what being an artist, and that's what being an athlete, I think, is about, is like having that focus. And sometimes it doesn't make sense when you're in the journey, but eventually it can come to light. Like eventually you're going to come out of that tunnel and see something, and be able to show for it. That's what, we were able to do with Songlink eventually 4 years later, but it's not always pretty either. Like when you're on that journey, you have to commit. There's something about like really committing to what you want to create. So yeah, just a side anecdote about entrepreneurship and just how it's just not always pretty too at the same time of the vision that you're trying to create. Like you're not going to get there in 2 days. You're not going to get there in a year. Sometimes it takes 10 years. It takes 15 years. A lot of these people that we see that are successful in the space, we don't know their history. And a lot of them, it took a lot of time to really truly grind. And especially with artists, like finding that sound and finding that story that you want to create and connect with people, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. Your story kind of reminds me, slightly different space, but still kind of in the music realm, music tech realm, like not being an active musician, but being, in music tech. I don't know if you know of Barefoot Sound. They make speakers, studio monitors, and like professional audio equipment. And the guy who started it, this guy Barefoot, I forget his first name, but he kind of very similar thing in Palo Alto, like making the speakers out of his garage, like very not pretty kind of thing. And it was really the relationships that he was able to curate through grinding and through meeting people and forming, connections, various connections, that he was able to get success. And it's funny because it doesn't matter where you look. It's always the same when it comes to that. You always need to have those connections. You always need to be grinding when it comes to curating who's around you and kind of who's influencing you. If and it's the same in life in general, right? If you hang around 10 people who are robbing Walmart, you're probably going to be robbing Walmart. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's just true, right? And you hang around 10 people that are really successful, you're probably going to inherit some of those, you know,
Yep.
routines.
Yeah, my that's another like quote my dad would always tell me, because he didn't really come from much, and like he really found a way to acquire, just work really hard for all of the things. Wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but he's always like, hey, marriage is the name on your back. Like, one, don't ruin the name, and two, you are who you surround yourself with. And I think it's the average of the five. You are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. That's like a quote that always floats around, but it is very true. If you want to learn how to make money, surround yourself with millionaires. If you want to learn how to build a music company, surround yourself with music entrepreneurs. If you want to uh, be a great musician, like hop in loners and be part of communities that have talented musicians. In a way, it's very simple because you learn about their routine, you learn about the work that they put in, and naturally over time, you will feel like an outlier if you don't do what those people are doing to be successful. And they will teach you the blueprint. And all you need to do is just take those seeds and those nuggets, and it's not copy them, but okay, how does this relate to my life? What's something I can learn from them? And how can I add it to my life and add value to my life, not do exactly what they're doing, but take it, learn from it, and apply it.
Absolutely. Couldn't be more right. I'd like to ask you a little bit about Arpeggi and kind of like what you're doing now.
Sure.
I think that, I'm a little bit familiar with the company and uh, think that what you guys are doing is pretty interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I think that right now, unfortunately, crypto's in kind of a tough space and the market is hurting a little bit. The economy in general is, people are worried, right, to say the least. And because of
Yeah.
that, there's less, free money floating around. And so I think a lot of companies are in weird spaces. So, given the current climate of crypto and Web3, people are still very excited about it, but there is, at least from my perspective, a little bit of hesitation right now, um, or worry. So, what do you see as the future for Arpeggi, and what do you hope to see grow or change within, let's say, the next 6 months, a year?
That's a great question. I guess for context, like I was at Mint Songs, and my main job was head of growth, so bringing in artists to pretty much upload MP3s, make those into music NFTs, help those artists tell those stories, help them generate revenue from 50 collectors versus trying to chase 5 million streams. After a year, our founders kind of wanted to pivot, and unfortunately, that company was shut down. And this was this past August. And I talked to a lot of companies in the space. I talked to a lot of Web2 companies. Given my background with SongLink, I was like, I really love the music space, music tech, and I want to stay here. And when I met Evan, James, and Kyle, the founders, I got one. I was, wow, these guys are really thoughtful about like how they're approaching the space. And when I talked to a lot of companies, especially in Web3, they focused on the minting and they focused on the post mint. When Arpeggi focused on music creation layer, building this in browser DAW, running remix competitions, working with a lot of notable artists in the space. They were funded by some promising investors that I looked up to, currently look up to, being A16 Crypto. So all of these things combined and seeing where they were headed, I just had a lot of belief. Being in a bear market, bull market, I said, okay, this company has funding. Uh, I really believe in the problems that they're solving. And early on, they not early on, but they brought me on to be the head of growth, meaning really it's focusing on the artist partnerships and building activations and community engagement around those artist partnerships. And over the last few months, we focused on, like I said, building relationships around the in-browser DAW, doing remix competitions, one being with, who we both know, Rio Kragen, the Zoom competition. We had like over 35 submissions. And I'm like, oh, this is really fun. This is like a collaborative product that I see really impacting the community, being a bear, bull, whatever market that we're in. And these last 10 weeks, we shifted to launching a platform called Kits, which is tokenized sample packs. And we took a curated approach for this first season one, where we launched with, if you're in Web3, you'll know these artists being TK, Abjo, Dot, Misfit, who launched his kit today. And upcoming, we have Edwin from Pretty Much and Ramzoid, who's a well-known producer and known for his sample packs. And really this tokenized sample packs where you're buying into a license, you're able to own those samples through this license, and then we're running fun activations around them. So like with TK, he had his Eternal Garden project, over I think 777 editions were minted on sound with that project. He rounded up all of the samples, which was 278, and we made a kit out of that. In the first week of that launch, we had a remix competition. So, hey, anybody who buys this pack, uh, find a way to create a remix out of that. He'll pick the best two, recreate the best two, throw some vocals on it, and drop it on sound on his profile. Um, so that's where we're headed with kits. I don't want to, I can't talk about like exactly what we're doing next in terms of
Yeah.
kits, but the tokenized licenses around sample packs and staying in this layer, like if we want to stay, 10,000 feet above of music collaboration and Web3. And I'll say this, like I see us in this bear market building a product that has very unique sounds, very unique stories that will be able to connect with people in the Web2 world that are familiar with Splice and go there for downloading sounds. And maybe they feel like, a lot of those sounds are being ripped by a lot of the same producers or the same music makers. So they need other platforms where they can go and get samples that can help them elevate their music. I see a lot of artists coming to kits over the next coming months, and we're going to be building tech that allows them, being the credit card purchasing and just rails that make it friendly for any artist that finds value in these samples. And it goes back to truly what I've loved to do from the beginning, is working with artists and like building stories around the content that those artists are creating. And that's what I'm focusing on at Arpeggi.
Yeah, I like that. And I know that you know, a lot of these Web3 companies have been really trying to address this gap between Web2 and Web3, and being able to onboard not just the musicians and people creating the content, but also collectors and people who would be willing to actually pay for the content, right? A lot
Mm.
of people still, if you're in the space, you feel like everyone has a crypto wallet and knows what they're doing with, MetaMask and buying NFTs and, using exchanges. But for the average Joe, they, want to use their credit card, they want to swipe, right? Or they want to,
Yeah.
one of the really successful platforms that comes to mind is Nifty Gateway. I'm sure that you're aware. And, one of the nice things there is you can, pay with card, right on the website. And I think that was a huge kind of, you know, attractive part of the company's kind of growth that helped them out. And I think
Yeah.
it's a really good thing for all these companies, whether it's sound,
Yeah.
Arpeggi and kits. I think it's a really good thing to have on the horizon is, you know, working with, I think Moon is doing some credit card payment style things. Um, yeah, just I think focusing on that is going to be big for the space because at the end of the day, like crypto is, there is this attractive part of the decentralization, and I'm a big proponent of that. But at the same time, we're not there yet when it comes to the average Joe.
No, and I think we're probably a few cycles away from like my mom getting it, you know? Like
Yeah.
I always go back to that because it's
Hey, my
really
mom
funny.
has a crypto wallet.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'll
I
say
made it
this,
for her.
my you should have thrown in that last part. Actually, in 2006, 17 is when I bought my first Bitcoin and Ethereum. But my dad was like in 2016, he was working at IBM at the time, IBM Watson specifically, and was like, hey, you should check out this blockchain stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this is kind of like in this AI world, blockchain. He's like, it's really interesting. It's like decentralization, and it was kind of over my head at the time. And yeah, I see the value. I think we all see the value, especially now. If you're still here now during this market, I think we all see the value, and I think we all realize that sometimes we could be talking in an echo chamber, kind of be talking to the same people about the value in Web3. Like we get it. Now it's about adoption. Now it's about growing the space. Now it's about laying those bricks and building these rails that makes it easier for the common artist who wants to use this as a revenue pipeline and a community pipeline to feel empowered to jump in the space and not feel discouraged because they don't know what even decentralization means. They don't know what a music NFT is. They don't know what the fuck a smart contract is. So it's
Yeah.
like, and I don't know if it's their job to know that, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's the tech's job to set up rails and pathways for them to find better understanding, to be able to build stickiness in products where it's like, oh, I get it, like immediately. I got it because I spent 5 years in the music industry, and I'm like, there's something wrong with streaming. Really talented artists are still working at Whole Foods throughout the day to
Yeah.
sustain their career. There has to be another answer. And if you don't have that curiosity, it's really hard to break into this space. And, fighting headlines and fighting things that we're seeing. And I get all these messages from like family members or past people that I've worked with at Songlink that are like, are you still in this Web3 stuff, Nick? Like, are you still doing, like, is it fun? Almost like it's like a side hobby that
Yeah.
I'm like, and we just have to show them. It's not even like tell them about it at this point. You have to show them with the tech. And I think that's where we are. I think some really great stories have come out over this last year. It was really interesting coming into a space. It's such a hot point. Like I came in October, Sound raises a fund in December. We raise at Midsong's our big investment round in December. We go on like a 4 or 5 month bull run, and like, people are selling songs for $10,000. Like it was just kind of crazy at the time. And now there's a little bit of regulation. There's a little bit of, I would say more of a bear market, but there's going to be balance, I would say, before the next kind of bull run. And I think that allows us to like really keep building products that aligns with the normal artists, and like again allowing them to come into this space, find a way to build a community, find a way to build a revenue path so they don't have to rely on streaming, they don't have to rely on traditional music industry that they haven't found success in.
Yeah. For sure. Um, Recently there was this development around, I don't know if you follow like gaming or,
A little bit, yeah.
streaming or, some of these esports, but, FaZe Clan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so as a business kind of guy who's involved in marketing, involved with growing brands and collaborations and meeting people, what's your take on a business focusing on celebrity endorsements versus focusing on actual quote unquote talent that's involved in the business? Right? You have, these companies like FaZe Clan or, other specialized companies that I would say, right? They were originally specialized in gaming, right? Would be their genre and their niche. And then reaching out to someone like Snoop Dogg to be like ambassador for their brand to grow the company. Do you think that that approach can be successful, or do you think that the approach of focusing on the kind of actual niche that the company is in is the better way to go?
Yeah, it's like focusing on, do you lean into influencer marketing or do you lean into community engagement and going from 1 to 5 to 50 to 100 people, members in your community, right? I, I don't like seeing, for example, like The Game and some of these other artists that came in last year. Chris Brown dropped an NFT project, promoted it for 3 to 5 days, and then you never saw them again. That doesn't help anybody. That puts some of these, that kid from FaZe Clan went to jail for a pump and dump last year.
Yeah.
Uh, so I like, if you really believe in it, right, and you really believe in the future of it, and you have a brand or you have a community that you built before then, that's like great, right? Like if tomorrow Timbaland came to us and was like, "Hey, I want to drop a pack on kits," like somebody who's been in the space for a minute, like absolutely, like let's do this. A friend of mine, I can say this, and a mentor is Illmind. He's somebody who I worked with at Mint Songs. He's somebody who I threw events with at NFT NYC last year. Somebody who I lean on in terms of producer communities, and he's somebody who's won multiple Grammys. He's helped multiple producers. He built a platform called Squad of Nights. Like he puts in the legwork to show that yeah, he is somebody that has found immense success with Web 2 as an artist, but really believes in Web 3 and really believes that there needs to be some shifts that can find success for developing artists. So if you can find influencers that have that belief and that dedication, I think that's the best like mix of the two. Obviously, Snoop has done like great things in the space, and he's been a part of a lot of projects. He's dropped on Sound, like I forget how much Eve he did on some of those drops, but like bringing in Black Dave and bringing in Heno and bringing in Amon on that drop, those are the right moves you take. You don't just come in, like you recognize the space, you recognize the builders, you collaborate with those builders, and you show the community that you're actually engaged in what's going on and not just, well, I'm fucking Snoop Dogg. I could just come in here and drop an NFT, make 5 million, and you never see me again. Um, so as a company and as a business, I feel like if you're going to align yourself with influencers, they really need to align with the ethos and the structure and what you're actually trying to build. Do they get it? Do they actually uh, use your product? Are they on your website? Like, do they understand who you are? And I think that will generate the most, what I call is like cost a CAC, which is like customer acquisition cost. So like having somebody you pay Snoop Dogg $1 million to come in and do a bunch of things around your product. Well, how many customers is he actually driving through the pipeline of your product? And making sure that those numbers align in a short-term and long-term game. I'm more of a long-term guy, so like focusing on the long term, making sure that this is sustainable growth. That is truly what's key for business, and making sure that you're just not surrounding yourself with like splash moments, because that's not Web3. Web3 doesn't need splash growth. They need sustainable long-term growth.
Yeah, we've already had like maybe a little bit too much of the splash
Yeah.
growth, and a lot of that is tied into these like pump and dump scam style. I don't know if scam is the right word. I know that people throw around the word scam a lot in the space, and there definitely are people who have things stolen from them, uh, in nefarious ways by
Yeah.
malicious contracts that people write. It's basically just at the end of the day, it's a software platform, right? So people can manipulate it with bad software. But I think there's also this scam terminology that's thrown around when it comes to people just doing, like you said, they come in, they're not really interested in this space at all. They're just interested in making a quick buck. So they come in, they drop an NFT project or,
Yep.
whatever it is, music NFT. They sell, 1,000 copies, 10,000 copies, make whatever amount of money, and then leave. And people get upset about it. But at the same time, I don't know actually how I feel. I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing, but I think that there needs to be at least some acknowledgement that at the end of the day, like the person isn't really saying like, "Oh, buy this, it's going to be worth 10x later on." Like maybe
I wouldn't call them scammers,
yeah.
right? Because they probably have the right intention. Like if even like what happened with Logan Paul, I think that like I think right intention, what happened and what played out was just kind of the wrong move and kind of hurt his brand a little bit. But if Gatorade hires Kendrick Lamar tomorrow, Gatorade doesn't expect Kendrick to hop in the Discord, Gatorade's
Yeah.
Discord, and stay there for 6 months
That's
and
the
be
thing, it's
like,
unreasonable.
I believe in the sports drink. This is like what
Yeah.
they don't have to become obsessed with it. But that's where it really matters with who you align yourself with and partnerships with. I don't think it's right to call them scammers for a lot of these people. I think they were given opportunities. They looked at it like a brand deal. They
Yeah.
executed what was offered to them. they got the money that came from the return of that partnership, and they kept building their career. Do I call them a scammer? No. They just took
Yeah.
advantage of a partnership that was offered.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be some people like to pass the blame, right?
Yeah.
People like to pass the blame. Well, I spent $50 on the NFT. Like I was scammed out of my $50. Like they just don't want to admit that they bought something for $50 that's worthless. Like it's like if I watch a podcast on YouTube and someone advertises a product in it, right, and utilizes their reach and their celebrity status to get me to buy that product, right? Is it then should I be then whining about them having influenced me to buy the product? I don't know. It seems kind of like some BS. Like it seems like some 15-year-old kids that use their mom's credit card to buy an NFT and now they just want their money back. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it gets tricky though too when you're dealing with financial products and like promoting those financial products. And you're right, like a 13-year-old kid snags their mom's credit card,
Yeah.
scoops up all of these NFTs that cost a few $1,000, and they're like, "We're gonna make all this money on this thing," and it doesn't work out, and they want to sue that specific person. Yeah, and this is what comes with like building in the wild wild west and like being a part as an early adopter and throwing stuff at the wall and trying to figure out what works. And this comes with growing pains in the industry, and I think we're all kind of just learning and trying to figure it out in the moment.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what A16 does,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot
Yeah.
of, spread out the capital to a bunch of different places and see what sticks, see what makes a lot of money. You look at Sound, they've gotten a lot of funding. A lot of these other companies have gotten funding from, VCs or whatever that just they're trying to make money too. There's no
Yeah.
guarantees at the end of the day of which one of these companies is going to make it, or even if any of these companies are going to make it. They're just betting on this space in general, and and some of them inevitably are going to fail. And I've bought NFTs that when I was really into the space and thinking, oh my god, this is going to go crazy. This is going to be these NFTs are going to be worth so much, and then it turns out, they kind of they lose most of their value, right? But then I switched my mentality to kind of thinking it more like buying someone's actual artwork, right? That
Yeah.
you should just buy it because you like it and you want to support the artist, and that kind of directed me into wanting to be more interested in these collectives like Loners, because Loners is really passionate about the actual building up of communities. And I've now done a drop through them, but I also have collected like 10 or 15 of like the artist drops, because you know it's like a platform that I actually believe in supporting the artists, not because I'm trying to make, like, I'm not flipping them, you know what I mean? I'm not looking at it um as a financial kind of venture of sorts. It's not a stock to me. It's more of a artwork. And I think, like you said, there is this weird space in the relationship because Bored Apes are, investments for people. There are people that don't just look at it as like a flex. There are people that bought them thinking like, I'm putting $50,000, $100,000 into this. Like, it's gonna make me a multimillionaire. And
Right.
some of those people, you know, did, and some of those people didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing though. So I think looking back, seeing that somebody like got in early on some of these allow lists and paid a few $1,000 for something
Yeah.
that turned out to be multimillionaires. Overall, it's not like a great look because then everybody like chases that instead of
Yeah.
like you said, the art. Like I didn't buy Kanye West's ticket when I was in fifth grade and I saw him open up for John Legend because I thought I could flip that ticket and make
Yeah.
money on it 10 years later. Or like I didn't, as a kid, like keep baseball cards and jersey cards and have people sign those so I can flip them. I bought them because I like them. I bought them because I was a baseball player. I was influenced by these people. I wanted to surround myself with greatness. Like, and I looked up to these people. And I think the same is where we are now is I buy a Rio NFT because I love his music. Like I buy a Daniel Allen NFT because I like his music. And I appreciate how they're building in the community, and I appreciate the conversations I have with them. So it's that's where it comes back with me, and I think it's a key thing that you said. It's about the art. So focusing on the art, focusing on the community has always been the root of why I'm here and why I'm building in this space and working in this space. And uh, I think others that jump into the space just looking at it as a financial gain, if you do that with anything in life, it's normally just not going to work out the way that you think if you're just jumping in for a financial gain, and don't do it here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's, really good advice to give. And I think that unfortunately not many people follow it because, the dollar signs are really pretty and, people like
Right.
to chase them. But, it is really true. And, I think the more people that kind of live by that in the space, the more adoption we'll have and the better it will be for artists and basically just for everyone in the space. I think right now NFTs kind of have a weird stigma attached to them, but once we kind of start moving in the direction like you were describing, I think it will improve and hopefully that can happen, you know.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but at the end of the day, thank you so much for coming on. I know that you have to go pick up your son and take care of the family, managing all the things in life like
Got
we
that
got to
time
do.
block, got that 5 o'clock time block.
Exactly. But, I really appreciate you coming on, Nick. And, for anyone who's listened, to this, make sure you go check out what Arpeggi is doing. Kits is doing some really cool drops in the future. And yeah, just keep a lookout. I'm sure that you're going to be involved with even more, things in the future. So it was really great talking to you. And you have a lot of very valuable experiences that, everyone can learn from. So really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today. And I know like you dropped that message in Loners group chat. You're like, hey, if anybody wants to come on my podcast, I reached out. Really thankful for this opportunity. And if anybody's listening, yeah, shoot me a DM. I'm very accessible. Love hopping on calls, talking about what we're building at Arpeggi. Yeah, would love to chat. Thanks
All
again,
right.
Lucas.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick.